everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Most Important Conversations. As usual, Jenna and I are talking about the most important conversations about sex and relationships. And wow, there's just so much going on for me around this right now because Jenna, I shared this article with you. It was a Substack, and it's led to all these little tangents that we can go down. So this is a Substack written by Louise Perry, and she's a good writer. I subscribe to her Substack because I'm curious about some of her perspectives. She wrote this one article called "I'm 30 and the Sexual Revolution Shackled My Generation." And her subtext is sexual symmetry between men and women was, is, and always will be a lie. A little bit extreme, I think. Basically there's nothing that men and women share in common in terms of sexuality. I don't know if I buy that. But just to set up sort of the conversation, I'm not going to, go through every point in this. To say that I generally disagree with the article would be an understatement. I think she's really missing the point. Effectively, her argument is that the sexual revolution, which basically, in her way of describing it, and I think this is overly simplistic as well, basically, to sum it up, she says the sexual revolution is where women were basically empowered to use their sexuality as a form of liberation. And it was sort of a derivative of the feminist movement, which was, if women needed to find a way to succeed and thrive in a man's world, then they would adopt male traits. And one of the traits she's talking about is this promiscuity, this ability to have sex with whoever you wanted, no strings attached, which she says led to hookup culture. And she said this has effectively been a disaster for women. She's, saying it's led to increases in rape culture and violence. It's led to the demoralization of women's self-esteem, self-respect, and other things. And she's basically, I'm just trying to summarize it, and then we can get into whatever's showing up for us. And then she's going on talking about, chivalry was a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. But then she's going on saying, basically, don't have sex with anyone unless you're going to marry them. We got to go back to where we came from. This has been an unmitigated disaster. It's made men more violent. She says monogamous marriage is the only stable and reliable foundation. I'm just scanning here. So, I think what this article is in reaction to is a couple of things. I think it's in reaction to, and we've been kind of talking about this on this podcast, the rise of the manosphere, the whole incel thing we've been talking about, and sort of this manosphere. If you look it up, this is sort of the Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate world of let's go, Jordan saying, let's go back to conservative religious ideology in terms of the way we structure society. Andrew's the flip of that. I don't think they would agree with each other in terms of, Andrew's basically saying women are, whatever I want them to be. They're a slave to me, a sexual slave, a servant slave, a whatever slave. So I don't think they agree on that. But what they do agree on is the hegemonic dominance of the masculine. Mm-hmm. And so if you're going the Jordan Peterson route, the man's the head of the household, women are subservient to that. And this article kind of would be more Jordan Peterson light, kind of Louise Perry's article. But anyway, I think that this article and this conservative movement that's peaking up right now is a reaction to a sense of a loss of control. Men are feeling a loss of control. Women, instead of demanding that men evolve, are, if they're adhering to Louise's argument, are saying, let's just go back to when I didn't have to think about this stuff. I was safe. I was protected. I was sheltered. I'm willing to give up my liberation and my freedom for that, which is always the autocratic path. People will, for the sake of safety, security, and to stop the amygdala lights going crazy in their brain, will say, just give me the rules and tell me what to do, and then I won't think anymore. So I'll shut my brain off. I'll stop being a creative, inspired person, and I'll become an automatron. And anyway, I'll stop. I mean, there's so many places we could go with this. I think it's a mistake to go backwards We don't want to go backwards. We need to figure out, okay, here's where we are. There were good things that came out of the sexual revolution. And yeah, there was some stuff that's probably dysfunctional. So let's look at that. But instead of just retreating, let's lean into the stuff that worked and let's revise the stuff that needs to be tweaked. At least that's the way I look at it. So what do you think about all this?
Well, I mean, we had done a little preamble about it. So the desire to compartmentalize and control is when we're mind dominant, when we're only living from our mind and we're not in our body and we're not in our heart meaning emotion and the ability to feel and use your feelings as an asset and energy and guidance. All of that's out the window. Like none of that's included in any of this. The ability to choose powerfully, none of that's taught. What we're seeing is a lot of reactions to reactions. I mean, the feminist movement, as I said, wasn't about being a man. It was about having equal rights. Right. Women then had to adopt to a man-made world. And now they're in another place where I work with a lot of women leaders that we can refeminize because there's a mass imbalance of our natural powers and energies that are meant to be complementary. So in all of that, it's like hookup culture. Okay, well, the problem is most women are still people pleasers, are still feeling like they need a man to want them to be valuable. Like none of that's been transformed. Right. The problem is a lack of transformation. Right. Not the shit that we keep moving around to different places. And so men, even when I'm dating, I'm like, rise up, dude. You know what I mean? Don't test how far you'll let me go down. Right. Like, can I be late? How lazy can I be? How like that? I see that in the dating world. And then when I set a standard, they rise up. Why? Yeah. But women aren't taught how to do that in a I don't do it in a bitchy way. I do it in a that doesn't work for me. So if you're not going to do this, then I'm out. So that kind of thing to me in the hookup culture and in the, we don't need to go back to conservatism. We need to go forward to heightened communication, curious communication. Like what's going on for you when you want to watch the football game and not come down to greet me or not do these things that you really should be doing. That make me feel considered. True story. And so, that makes me feel less than, and that makes me either shrink my needs, which makes me a lesser version of myself, which I have no interest in being. But very few women will know how to navigate that and go, why don't I feel good about this? Why is you doing the Why is you? Why is it that you doing the bare ass minimum is okay? Like, why is that okay for you? Because I don't think men want to be mediocre. And I don't think women want to keep having to make them be better with nagging and this and that. And I think I see a lot of that too. So anyway, that's a whole other topic on the whole hookup culture and conservatism. But I'm really interested in the romantic space about conscious conversation and curiosity and transparency and being messy together. Like, oh, that didn't work for me. Okay, why? And not to be so not trying to hurt other people's feelings and just like, let's just talk like people. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Okay, let's do this. I think I just want to, I'm not trying to pick on Louise, but I think her article gives us some good chunky things we can help viewers and listeners process and integrate, because there is a conservative trend right now. I've never been a fan of conservatism I understand where it comes from, but I've never been a fan of it, generally speaking. And the reason is because if we took it to its sort of limits, we would still be in the Middle Ages. I mean, if you're always going to go back for answers to how you should live, why are we even living in this world right now? I mean, liberalism and the idea of liberal thought, creativity, advancements in human society has never come from conservative models. It won't, because the whole notion of conservatism is to conserve, to protect, and to mitigate advancement, right? And so this retreat back to the good old days, that whole sort of thing that we all do as human beings, it's like, oh, I've strayed too far outside of where my sense of feeling safe is. I need to retract, right? I need to contract. I need to shrink. Versus, no, I need to adapt. I need to evolve. I need to create. I need to learn from what worked and didn't work, tweak what's not working. But it doesn't mean that things that are working have to be thrown out and we have to go back to where we started, right? So let's just
also,
go.
I just wanted to say there's also, you were mentioning these two states of being of like conserve and then evolve and create.
Yeah.
But I want to also include the stabilize part, that too many people don't hang out in stabilization in a powerful way either, of like, let this gel and let's let this actually,
integrate.
Yeah. Like, well, I was like, wait, we can't just do this or that. That's just nuts. This part is just as important. So anyway.
Yeah, I think if there's good point, I think if there's a weakness in the liberalist movement, it is those who are more sort of inclined to that approach to like, we tend to move too fast, right? So we don't integrate, we don't synthesize very well. So that's an important thing. But this sort of retreat back to conservatism, it's just a fear response, really, at the end of the day. Right?
It's control. We want to control when we don't feel safe, and we want to compartmentalize when we want to understand everything to feel in control. And that's the least interesting part about humans, is their thinky brain.
Yeah. Okay, let's just go one by one. Some of these will be less. So she says, distrust any person or ideology that pressures you to ignore your moral intuition. Okay. I mean, I can't really argue with that. You've got, right? It's pretty self-explanatory. Chivalry is a good thing. We all have to control our sexual desires, and men in particular, given their greater physical strength and above average sex drives.
So I have an understanding of the word chivalry that has nothing to do really with what she's talking about.
Okay.
So like withholding your sexual drives, I would never have put those two together.
Right.
So I'm just going to look up the definition of that. Chivalry.
I thought chivalry was like, when I think of it, it's like, being courteous, opening doors, being engaged, responsive.
Yeah, I don't understand what she's trying to say there. Like, I think that's just, she's tying those two together in a way that doesn't make any sense. Chivalry is a set of ideas about how a knight should behave, or a way of behaving that is polite, honorable, kind, especially by men towards women.
It's politeness. It's kindness.
So, okay.
That has nothing to do with your sex drive.
Not raping people. Anyway, obviously that's the extent of men need to control themselves, and women can't wear mini skirts because that just makes men want to rape them.
Because men have no control over their emotions and that's the thing to focus on. That's the thing
you're talking about, having a sense of assent or having a self-relation. Who do you want to be in your highest expression? And you should want that for yourself.
Yeah.
So
okay. She says, sometimes, though not always, you can readily spot sexually aggressive men. There are a handful of personality traits that are common to them: impulsivity, promiscuity, hypermasculinity, and disagreeableness. And these traits should put you on your guard. So sexually aggressive men are impulsive, promiscuous, hypermasculine, and disagreeable.
Those guys are.
Yeah. And that's not all men.
That's not all men. That's when it's that guy who's, anyway, there's a story I could tell, but anyway, when it's that guy, who needs to be right, who gets, you can actually feel because women are naturally intuitive, men are intuitive, but some of them need to work on it. You can feel when they're just aggressive, just sitting there, it's a feeling.
Well, and I got to say, this is something that I think I have had to work on myself, because I think the culture has, historically encouraged some of that. And it's something that I've had to really, but here's the point. Men can adapt, evolve, and better themselves by going inward and being introspective and thinking, developing what we teach in whole life architecture, emotional sobriety. So a lot of that stuff she's talking about here, that impulsivity, hypermasculinity, these are men, and I could say I came from this place at one point in time where, You're a walking aggressive reaction. Why? Because you've suppressed and repressed your emotions. You haven't integrated them. So you've got this literal bubbling volcano of angst that at the slightest little thing will explode on people. But what I think she's missing is that's not who they are. That's learned behavior, which they can unlearn.
And that's what we need to transform, because women don't feel safe with it, but they'll tolerate it. You know, I mean, a lot of women, this cute girl, she's 26 and she's dating, I'm going to just call them losers. Like they just don't care. They see what they can get away with. They, you know, she has no clue that there's another world out there of men that are good men that just, that want you to feel good, that want what's best for you, because they like, that is an organic expression of themselves. They're not trying to get you in bed. They just want that for you. Like she has no idea that exists. So they keep dating those women who have no idea that another thing is possible. Yeah.
Now, I just want to point out, so we're going through her advice. This is the advice she says she would give her daughter, okay? Now, this is in the context of an article she wrote on how the sexual revolution has been a disaster. I'm not clear how this advice is yet connected to the sexual revolution. Like, is she saying the sexual revolution has created the lack of chivalry? Has created aggressive men?
I think she's saying that it's created an open door for the men to get in your bedroom easier. Like if you're waiting till marriage, right? If that guy has to date you, and there's like, if you think back, right? Like there was an understanding of courtship and coming to the door and that chivalry, but a lot of the chivalry was wolf in sheep's clothing. Oh, I guess this is what I have to do to get laid, which is very different. But that there was that didn't protect anybody, because then you just marry the rapist. Like, I mean, the problem.
Well, listen, it reminds me of 1950s black and white movies, of which I'm a huge fan of old Hollywood, golden age Hollywood movies. Right. I love these things, right? But if you watch the masculine, feminine sort of archetypes they're playing out, the men were chivalrous until the women was hysterical, and then the man would slap her in these movies and say, "Get a hold of yourself, woman." Okay? That was what this is. We're going back to that. We're going back to, don't listen to what she's saying. Slap her in the face.
Yeah. But at least they're married. So.
Yeah. At least they're married.
Good luck.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so I see that as what her through line is like sexual revolution leading to hookup culture, leading to, there isn't this safe monogamy of like, I'm with someone who now I'm not susceptible to all of these.
But you would still be.
You totally would be. But I'm saying that's what I think she's saying.
Yeah. Okay. A man who's aroused by violence, you should steer clear of. Sure. Maybe. I mean, it's aroused also, by violence.
It's also like competitive. So I don't actually agree with that. Aroused by violence. I mean, I would need to have a conversation with her, but like,
well, she says if he can maintain an erection while beating you, you don't want to be alone with him. Okay, that's pretty extreme.
Fair enough. Nope. Unless there's like a whole set of things in between about BDSM kink things where you've already predetermined what you're doing and that's what you actually want. But in that sense of, with the 50 Shades of Grey, he's a terrible example of it because he's dealing with his unhealed trauma in his sexual, that is an example of toxicity that needs, and they do a good job of saying this needs healing, but they come in with someone and have him actually go on a journey. The next book that would be awesome if it's like, let me figure this out. Let me not take this out on you, this woman that I love.
Yeah. So, okay. Consent workshops are useless. The best way to reduce incidents of rape and reduce the opportunities for would-be rapists would be to keep them in prison and limit access to victims. To me, I don't even know how you do that. By the time you've raped someone before you go to jail, the rape's done. I mean, I'm not really sure. And prison doesn't rehabilitate. We know this. No. It just reinforces the very behavior you're trying to, so I don't see any. And again, I don't see what that has to do with the sexual
I
revolution.
see her saying they need to be, I see her saying within that there is no rehabilitation. So the only way to protect women is to identify the violent offenders and keep them away. That's what I see from that.
There's a program at San Quentin in Northern California, which I think is fabulous. I'm trying to remember the name of it. And it's a woman who leads it. And I'll see if we can post a link in the podcast. But effectively, she's working with all these men, some of them rapists, some of them murderers, some of them drug dealers, whatever. And she does this exercise where she has all these men, they're inmates, standing in a circle out in the yard. And she says, when you were young, if you were told, you were useless, would never accomplish anything and demeaned, step inside the circle. Every man steps inside the circle. If when you were young, you were beaten and abused and blah, 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 step inside the circle. Most of the men step inside the circle. If when you were young, you lived in a home where an adult parent was an alcoholic or a drug abuser or, blah, 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 step in. And she keeps going through all of this very destructive behavior that would have been the conditions and the environment in which these men lived. And by the end of it, I think she goes through like 10 or 12 of these sort of things. Almost all of the men are around her. And, again, this also goes to Gabor Mate's work, of which I'm kind of a fan of.
This is everything I do.
Right? Yeah, right.
This is what I do.
And her whole thing is these people weren't born this way. Yeah. So thinking that by just putting them in prison is going to solve the problem, in this case of rape culture.
Oh, I'm just saying, I see her point of, the only solution is to take them away. The reality is, we don't live in a healing culture. No. We live in a fixing culture, which leads to all of these reactions, which leads to all of these, put them away, like they're bad, judgment, bad, make go away. And when you look at the origin of what has created someone to be reactive, to act in an inhumane way towards another person based on their own pain, based on them having no other coping mechanism, like, none of that's being addressed.
Agreed. And it leads to her next point. If you're between the ages of 13 and 25, you should avoid being alone with men you don't know, or men who give you the creeps. Well, if someone's giving you the creeps, that doesn't seem like you need advice to stay away from that person.
That's incorrect. That's totally incorrect. Because women will have the programming, maybe, so
they give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. There's
they ignore the creep that they're getting, that creepy feeling. They ignore that.
Because you should be nice, and maybe they're this, and maybe they're that, and they'll believe what they say and not what they feel. So if the guy's like, "Oh, I'm here to sell you Bibles," like there might be there was a police officer out in this Oprah show. It was like I don't know, a long time ago, and it was a huge show because this police officer was saying like every time a woman had been attacked, there'd been some case where she had said, I felt XYZ, and led herself into being vulnerable, going to the second location, all of letting them in.
So the fix isn't women between the age of 13 and 25 avoid men who give
just
you the
more
creeps. The fix is start listening. This is what we have to train women to do. Listen to your emotions, listen to your intuition, right?
Validate feelings. And the medical system is the same. Like I worked with this young girl who had a problem and it ended up being cancer. And she's like, no, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. The doctor's like, no, it's not, blah, blah. Nope, something's wrong. Something's wrong. And so our work together was in reviving that internal system that had been betrayed.
Yeah.
So all of that work, all of the stuff we talk about, but that deep sense of knowing and our animal self when we're tuned in that says, nope. And so,
and in fairness to her, at the end, she says gut instinct should not be ignored. But then why tell women 13 to 25 to avoid men?
I don't think it's bad advice, because I remember when I was in the music business and this producer friend was like, hey, be careful. Like, I was
that's
so
an
naive.
industry.
I was so naive and young, and they don't always go together. You can be naive and old. And I said, oh, no, it's fine. He's married. This producer I was working with, like everything's, no, it's fine. He's married. Like I believed I was safe because he's married.
Well, that just goes to marriage isn't the solution here.
No.
Right? There you go.
No.
So,
no, it's just
monogamous marriage is
better, potentially.
Yeah.
But I can understand, the more I talk to men, they really just don't see all of the other nuance of women's lack of ability to use their intuition and be willing to be not liked and be willing to be difficult. Like, we're trained hard to not be difficult. So if this guy's like, oh, I was laughing with my friend. I was like, relax, just relax. The amount that fucking men say, just relax. And we just laugh because they're either doing it in a manipulative way. They're trying to get with you. They're trying to be like, no, just relax. It's like, fuck you. Like, what do you mean?
It's really demeaning, isn't it?
It's really so demeaning. It's used so much, and so many men do it because you're making me uncomfortable. I want my needs to get met, and you're not doing that. You should relax. So anyway, there's a lot.
Which, incidentally, when you tell someone to relax, they don't relax.
No, and it's a complete manipulation.
Yeah.
Do what I want.
All right, here's two for you that I think that you'll have. Don't use dating apps. She said, and I kind of agree. I won't say don't use it, but I do agree with the next part. It's better to meet someone through mutual friends, since there's a bit of a filtration system that's kind of naturally there. I don't think that's bad advice.
It's limiting.
But I wouldn't say don't use dating apps as sort of a rule.
I think there needs more about that. A lot. I do. I need to teach a course on it. Dating apps done with due diligence and with intuition and with self-awareness are great. Mm-hmm. You can cut through a lot of things. Meeting someone in person, it's just, geography, there's all these other limitations. So I think if we go spiritual, if I pop up out of all of this regular societal stuff, if I go into intuition and attracting the right people and being the right time in the right place and meeting cool people. So I wouldn't take away the ability to find someone through whatever, if you feel intuitively drawn to it. Now, if you're on there obligatorily, I'll never meet someone. If your energy's all jacked up, get off. Don't even waste your time. But if you know how to listen and you're in a good place, then anything you use is going to work better. So, because you could equally be, my friend introduced me to my one boyfriend, and there were some skeletons in the closet that they don't know.
Right.
And so that sort of false sense of security of well, Jessica knows Thomas. Does she?
Yeah. Good point.
So I can't say it's gonna, in her effort to keep everything safe and control everything, which it sounds like, it's no, go find your own autonomous self. So anyway, I think I think
that also goes to what you were saying a second ago. Listen to your gut feeling too, regardless of where you meet these people.
The other point I want to say is, how do you feel when you're with the person you're dating, even in the beginning? Do you feel like you can share? Do you feel like you can be yourself? Because that's all data. The early stages of dating shouldn't involve you not being you. So I find that people will make concessions. Well, I'm just figuring it out. I'm just getting to know them. His mom's sick, I don't know. And then you're losing yourself. But if you could feel like you can be yourself with that person, even in the early stages, that's good. That's a good sign, right? If on the early stages, you're it's really jagged and hard to communicate and you're having power struggles, take the hint. Some things you can transform, but so that I don't want to just say that, because maybe there is something you can transform with that person in that context, but you should be able to be yourself with another person is really my go-to advice for that.
Okay. And this is a little bit of a follow-up. Only have sex with a man if you think he would make a good father to your children. And she's even if you don't intend to have children, it's a rule of thumb to determine whether he's worthy of your trust. I
think that's stupid metrics. I think you could find of someone who you feel safe with, who you feel good with, who you feel seen and celebrated by, who you feel like you can trust, that you can communicate without being afraid you're going to hurt their feelings. And there's different I don't see what that has to do with being a dad. Because I've seen good dads and bad husbands, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly right.
So
yeah. There's a lot of sort of conflating of things. And again, I don't know what this has to do.
And if she's 30, this all makes sense because I'm 42. Okay. And I was still figuring a lot out. Like and then in that generation. So there's also just her trying to navigate and make sense of some pretty complex things.
Well, here's another thing too. There's generational stuff. Mm-hmm. So if she's 30, so she would have been born in 94.
Right. Whereas like then that's like the apps are crazy, right? The like social media and the dick pics and the send me a photo.
She would have been 10 when Facebook first came out. It wasn't popular in 2005. It became popular in 2007. So she's 12 in 2007. So we're talking. So this is important because, you know, for anyone who is not a Gen Z.
Yeah. I'm a millennial.
Right. And I'm an Xer. I'm 48. So we grew up in a time where you were interacting with people face to face and you learned certain skill sets that I just frankly think Gen Z doesn't have today. No. So the only model for them is, I guess, digital. At least if go back way back, but it was not better. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff, right? Monogamous marriage, she says, is the most stable foundation to build a family. I know so many people who that would not be the case for at all.
Yeah. But again, 30 makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of curious living to do after that point of finding who you are and questioning your things you've locked down on, like, oh, this is my belief and this is what I believe. And because I believe this, I know who I am in the world. Like I find that as you age that those can fall away. Yeah.
What about this? Loveless sex is not empowering. You have to be in love with someone to have sex with them?
Not this summer. But I would add, I am in a state of love because I believe I am connected to love. So it's not really loveless in that I don't.
You're just not in love with the person.
Like, yeah. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. Like, I think being in love in a monogamous or poly or whatever dynamic is a participatory decision that you're making on a relationship level. Like, okay, we're going to talk, we're going to have the hard conversations, we're going to make healthy concessions towards one another's well-being without losing yourself. Like, that's totally different than sex.
Yeah.
Like so the sex part, again, when done properly, if you know yourself, if you feel empowered within your own being, can be super duper fun. Like, I was joking with a friend. I was like, well, there's like the really fun cardio sex, where it's just fun and pleasurable. And it's like, hey, and then bye. And so therefore my expectations aren't, are you going to buy me flowers? Like, my expectations are congruent both ways. We know what's happening. That's fun. Yeah. That's fun. The expectation of something else, that would cause emotional damage.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that in the article, and that's all I'm going to talk about. And it goes on, but the summary of it, I think, is, this is a reaction to social media culture, I believe, more than anything. I think, and that's being 30, what she would have grown up with. So
and I can totally see her point. Yeah. I can see her point with all of that. And I can see how this is the conclusion she's come up with.
Yeah. But for those who grew up without social media culture, it's so interesting. We're literally, I don't think there's ever been a point in history where from one generation to another, there is such a demarcation in lived experience. Like, I think we're still grappling with and don't fully understand, and it'll probably take decades and then looking back to wrap our head around. And I really believe it is fundamentally destructive, how destructive social media, if I were to go net, has it been more positive or negative, it's way more negative than the positivity. The idea of its initial inception of, hey, you can connect to people who live in different places and that you haven't seen for a while, that seemed really nice.
I think originally Facebook was a dating thing of like, who are the hot chicks on campus? If I'm not
Originally, it was a ranking thing. Actually, it wasn't even a dating
So I was like,
thing.
but I also think everything is a illustration of our, like, it's a hologram of our belief systems as
That's
a
right.
society. But I'm going to go back to the dating apps, because if she's 30 and I'm going to rewind, now they can become an addiction. If you're in the dopamine, likes, now you need that guy to like you. Now you need that message, and now you're willing to lower your standards, and that's toxic, totally toxic. You can get addicted to it, and then you're not dating. You're not dating to have a good sexual experience. You're not dating, not that I know they have the discernment to do that so young, but you're not dating to figure out the person. You're dating to get the hit of dopamine. You're dating to feel liked. You're dating to feel relevant because something's missing for you. So I do see a lot of toxicity in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she ends her article by saying we need more rules and guardrails. And I'm an anti.
Oh, I agree with that though. I agree with guidelines, healthy, expansive guidelines.
Here's what I think. I stand, from an ontological place, I stand from a position of, I don't need more rules. I don't need more guidelines. I need more awareness. So I need to develop myself.
To an awareness to have certain guidelines.
No, but these are external. She's talking about external guidelines, external rules. And, I think we have way too many rules in our society. I think what we need to do is start to support one another, to raise each other up, to develop each other. If we were dealing with human beings who were at the peak of their self-awareness, whatever that means, and they were committed to the journey of continual self-awareness and continual work on themselves, you would not need these rules, right? Let me give you an example. Speed limits.
Yes, you have to give me this example before though.
Oh, it's okay. It's a great one though, right? So there's a rule, there's a guideline. Don't go faster than this. Now, who are speed limits for? They're for the people who are completely checked out, not paying attention, which incidentally, the speed limit does nothing in that case anyway, because they're checked out. So they don't even notice how fast they're going. But it makes us feel, not that it actually makes us safe, it makes us feel safe that we have these speed limits. So these are for people who are not self-aware, not paying attention to the road, eating, doing their makeup, doing whatever, and yet they're not paying attention to speed limits anyway. So this is why, right? When it comes down to it, speed limits are just a great tax. That's
right. It's having the ability to know I'm operating a vehicle, and so I'm going to consciously operate this vehicle. I understand what you're meaning from the rules being imposed, so that there's laws, et cetera, because people, the rules are there because of the checked out people. And I think there's a bridge of time where there still needs to be some guidelines. So when I work with clients and I say, okay, we're going to set boundaries, because you didn't like boundaries either, but they need them. They need tools to bridge boundaryless to a sense of self, but there's this bridge. And I think societally we need that bridge, but it would be more like guidelines.
Except here's the thing. We're not using these rules as a bridge. We're using them as an absolute structure.
Right. So the goal would be the bridge to me.
Yeah. So the goal would be to get rid of these rules at some point. It's like training wheels on a bike, right? We put the training wheels on the bike so you can learn how to drive the bike. Here's the problem. In our society, the rules or the training wheels, we never take them off.
No, because that wouldn't make anybody money.
Well, that's a different conversation, but agreed. Yes. Right. So this is where I'm saying we don't need fundamentally more rules and guidelines. What we need to do is have people become more emotionally sober, more self-aware, more present, right? That's what we need, because that's present, self-aware purpose. Yeah.
People want to feel on purpose. People want to be present.
Yeah.
Lack of models and even knowing it's possible, even though it's So with my friend who's, she's not a friend, a woman I know who's 26 and just doesn't even know it's possible. Doesn't even know it's possible. It's not talked about. There's no sexy movie about no drama,
Yeah.
like, but I think people are finding their way. I think their dissatisfaction drives them to go, what is the deeper solution? What is the deeper solution? Then they find people like us, or this conversation, because we talked about in this whole conversation was like the fixing and the reactions and the meaning making, and and her own reactions is basically her autobiography of here's everything I've been through that I don't want my daughter to experience. And here are my reactions to it. But, getting people to even know it's possible, I think is another good bridge. Like,
Agreed.
hey, I work with clients who have depression or anxiety because I didn't become a psychiatrist or psychologist intentionally, because I'm like, no, I don't want to, I believe in medication. I believe in whatever gets somebody calm and centered. But I didn't want to diagnose people. I wanted to help people heal. And I knew that wasn't in like, oh, you're this, you need to take this. When they start to work with me and use these tools and principles of feeling your feelings, managing your mind, is that a reactive emotion? Is it an authentic emotion? Knowing that they can even do that, knowing that they have the safety of the body for emotions to move through their system without them going crazy. That's their fear, going crazy. Not being able to come back up and out of it. If people knew that they could do that, and then the depression and the anxiety regulates. And now it's just, oh, I'm kind of agitated. Oh, I'm having a sad day. And they're not in this chronic state of whatever, mental health or whatever. But anyway, I digress. But the ability to know it's possible is what I'm excited about with stuff like this.
Yeah.
Like, this conversation. It's possible. The despair of I've tried everything and nothing's working, because you've looked outside of yourself and tried to fix and tried to bandage and duct tape with what you've seen in a society that wants to tell you to buy shit, right? Not to make this about that, but I mean, it is the self-development, like buy my stuff, you're broken, here's the thing. But when people really tune in, they can start to be guided to what will actually bring them to wholeness, into their natural state of wholeness that has the answers already within them. That is so cool. Like, that excites me to let people know that that's even possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and that's what we're advocating for is know thyself, as Socrates said. The more you connect to yourself, the more you trust yourself, trust the gut, the intuition, the feelings, the more you allow those. A lot of these sort of toxic men and the things that Louise was talking about in her article, I mean, this comes from decades of men basically being taught and trained to suppress and repress their feelings and not actually feel them. That doesn't mean they have to be, crying on the floor or anything like that. I mean, that's where people make the leap to.
No, and that bothers me so much. That's not emotional. That's a disarray of dysregulated emotions. Like, to be emotional allows you to be in your center for the most part while you're experiencing the feeling. But anyway.
Yeah. And so you're not burying it. Well, if you bury anything, it's just like a volcano, and it's going to erupt at some point in time. I actually think, coming back to her article about the sexual revolution being a bad thing, I think the sexual revolution has been a fantastic thing on many fronts, because I think right now what we're experiencing is a revolution of feminine consciousness, where women are now extricating themselves from the original sort of model of what it meant to be a feminist, to succeed in a male world. Women are now saying, no, we're actually demanding that women be respected for being women. And we're going to authentically be what it means to be a woman, and not try to win in a man's world with men's rules. We're going to be women, and men respect women and women respect men, and they each be who they are and what they are authentically. We have to create space for that. And so I'm seeing this what I call sort of the second wave or new femininity movement. I don't even want to call it feminist anymore. Being women standing in their power as women. And as a man, it's way more attractive and interesting to me than women trying to be men, because why would I want that?
Well, that's natural.
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting because you said you use the word just because you're probably passionate about it, the word demand. And I think what women are being able to do now that I go from the generation of my Nana who couldn't get a lawnmower loan from the bank because she didn't have a husband, and I have my own house and I have my own car and I have my own business and I can walk in the bank and get anything I want as long as I have the numbers add up. I mean, it's being the change and having the space. Like, let's say me, for example, like I run this company on a rhythm that works for me. I've created it to work for me. I wasn't interested in bending over backwards to get the 7-figure company and then work all those hours. I'm like, nah, I'm loving the space and time. So the ability to be the difference, the ability to go, how would I run this company that matches me, and to get creative and curious. But I think it's in being the solution that is the education, you know, because if you can succeed in this manner, then it is the evidence of it. There's no demanding necessary. It's
That's right.
Like you are the evidence of it. And I think that is what women through those generations, to my generation of 42, like are able to start to do. Like for the first time, like it's this freakish experience of like, okay, I don't have to be reactive about it. I can just be it, which also feels weird.
Yeah. I mean, consider that. I think it was until 1976. If a woman needed to be in court for any particular reason, they couldn't go to court on their own. They had to go with their father or if they weren't married, or their husband. They couldn't stand in a courtroom and have their voice wasn't relevant. That was 1976, right? So I don't know. I can't imagine going back is a solution.
No, but here is what I will say, and even though we're at the end of it, is that we can talk about this later. For myself as a single woman owning a house, owning a company, it's a lot. Like freaking housework. I hate all that shit. Anyway, the positive aspect of having advocates and protectors and people that want to help and people that want to make my life better. Like, let's go to the court. Let's help you with this. Let's go here. Let's help you with this. Like the positive aspect of that I would say I would extricate the positive aspect of that would be the support in the system of that, all that masculinity.
Sure.
And that there is something to that of having the community and having the support of others. So a lot of women are like, fuck it, I'll do it myself, right? Including the femcel, incel, feminine being celibate. Oh, screw it, I'm going to do it myself. That I would love to see a lot more of that support. So again, I'm always a fan of the middle space of like, you need the man to do this, but it's like, okay, I see where they're coming from with that, almost the positive aspect of that. But the negative aspect of that is larger. But I think it was just worth mentioning. Like, I would love for someone to come with me to make sure there's a blind spot I can't see, or, they know more than me.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's just the benefits of partnership.
Yeah. And so, a big reaction has been the toxic independence. And like, I'm not single because I'm like, I don't need a man. I'm just like, my standards are pretty high.
Yeah. It just doesn't.
Like, anyway, so yeah.
That's good. All right. Well, this has been a good conversation. We could talk about these things, in more depth, and we will, I'm sure. Well, I would just want to encourage Louise to get in touch with Jenna and work through some of these things. Have a little
and
chat.
Run workshops and empower people. Like, there's other ways of empowering people without being so reactive.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Most Important Conversations. Join us on the next episode where we're going to get into, I don't know what, but it's going to be equally interesting and challenging and growing. It's going to grow us all. So until then, we'll see you again next time. Thanks for tuning in.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at tmicglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.